On a cold autumn evening in a quiet neighborhood outside Denver, a small puppy sat trembling on the side of the road. Cars rushed past, their headlights flashing across its tiny body, but no one seemed to notice. The puppy looked lost, scared, and completely alone in the world. Then one woman stopped her car. She didn't know it yet, but that small act of kindness was about to uncover a story that would change more than one life and remind an entire community that even the smallest act of compassion can ripple farther than we ever imagine. Before we begin this story, take a moment to support the channel. If stories like this warm your heart, make sure to subscribe, like the video, and share your thoughts in the comments. Welcome to Kindness Story Hub, where we share real stories that remind us how powerful kindness can be. And now, let's begin. It had been a long day for Sarah Mitchell. 38 years old, Sarah worked as a nurse at a busy hospital. Her shifts were often exhausting, and that Thursday had been especially tough. After 12 hours on her feet, all she wanted was to get home, make some tea, and curl up on the couch. But as she drove down a quiet suburban road, something small moved near the curb. At first, Sarah thought it was a squirrel or maybe a stray cat. But as her headlights passed over it, she realized it was a tiny puppy. Without thinking, she pulled over. The puppy was no bigger than a loaf of bread, its golden fur matted and slightly dirty. It shivered in the cold air and looked up at Sarah with wide, uncertain eyes. "Oh, sweetheart," Sarah whispered softly. She knelt down slowly so she wouldn't scare it. The puppy hesitated for a moment, then wagged its tail, just a little. That tiny wag was all it took. Sarah gently picked the puppy up and wrapped it in the soft blanket she kept in her car for emergencies. "Well," she sighed with a small smile, "I guess you're coming home with me tonight." Back at her apartment, Sarah gave the puppy some water and a warm place to sleep. She checked its paws, cleaned the dirt from its fur, and placed a small bowl of chicken and rice in front of it. The puppy devoured the food like it hadn't eaten in days. As Sarah watched it eat, she felt a quiet warmth in her chest. She had always loved animals. In fact, she used to have a dog named Charlie growing up. Charlie had been her best friend through childhood, but he passed away many years ago. Seeing this tiny puppy curled up on her blanket brought back those memories. "You look like a Max," Sarah said thoughtfully. The puppy wagged its tail again, but Sarah knew the puppy probably belonged to someone. So the next morning, she took it to a local veterinarian to check for a microchip. The vet scanned the puppy carefully, then he paused. "Well," he said, looking at the screen, "looks like this little guy does have an owner." Sarah felt a wave of relief. "That's great," she said. "Who is it?" The vet hesitated slightly. "It says the owner is Daniel Harper." The name didn't mean anything to Sarah at first, but when the vet pulled up the address, she realized something surprising. The owner lived only 3 blocks away. That afternoon, Sarah placed the puppy, Max, as she had started calling him, into her car and drove to the address. The house was small and modest, with a slightly overgrown lawn and a faded blue mailbox. Sarah knocked on the door. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the door slowly opened. Standing there was an elderly man with tired eyes and silver hair. He looked like he hadn't slept well in days. "Hello," he said gently. Sarah smiled and held the puppy forward. "Are you Daniel Harper?" The man's eyes widened instantly. "Max," he whispered. The puppy barked excitedly and began wiggling in Sarah's arms. Tears immediately filled the man's eyes. "Oh my goodness, Max." Sarah placed the puppy into his arms, and the little dog licked his face happily. "I've been looking everywhere for him," Daniel said, his voice shaking. "He slipped out of the yard 2 nights ago. I thought I'd never see him again." He hugged the puppy tightly. "Thank you," he said quietly. "You have no idea what this means to me." Sarah smiled. "I'm just glad he's safe." But as she stood there talking to Daniel, she began to notice something. The house behind him looked almost empty inside. She could see only a small couch, a folding chair, and a few boxes stacked near the wall. Daniel noticed her glance. "I moved here recently," he explained softly, "after my wife passed away earlier this year." Sarah felt a sudden heaviness in her chest. "I'm so sorry," she said gently. Daniel nodded slowly. It's been lonely, he admitted. He looked down at Max, who was happily wagging his tail again. My daughter gave me Max a few months ago, Daniel continued. She said I needed a companion. He smiled faintly. She was right. Sarah realized something in that moment. Finding this puppy wasn't just about returning a lost pet, it was about returning comfort to someone who desperately needed it. Before she left, Sarah wrote her phone number on a small piece of paper. In case Max ever escapes again, she said with a smile. Daniel chuckled. I'll make sure he doesn't. Over the next few weeks, something unexpected happened. Daniel started texting Sarah updates about Max's little things. Max learned to sit today. Max chased a leaf across the yard. Max stole my sandwich. Each message made Sarah smile. Eventually, she stopped by one afternoon to say hello, then another time. Soon, visiting Daniel and Max became a regular part of her week. They would sit on the porch, drink coffee, and watch Max play in the yard. Slowly, the quiet loneliness in Daniel's home began to fade, and Sarah realized something surprising. Helping that puppy had helped her too. After years of long hospital shifts and quiet evenings alone, she had found a new friend. One evening, as the sun set over the neighborhood, Daniel looked at Sarah and smiled. You know, he said thoughtfully, losing Max for those 2 days was terrifying. He paused, but if it hadn't happened, I never would have met you. Sarah laughed softly. Funny how life works like that. Daniel nodded. Kindness has a way of bringing people together. And he was right, because one small decision, to stop the car and help a frightened puppy, had turned into something much bigger. It had reunited a man with his best friend. It had created a new friendship, and it had reminded two people that even in a world that sometimes feels busy and distant, kindness still connects us. So the next time you see someone or something in need of help, remember this story. A small act of kindness might seem simple in the moment, but you never know how far it might travel. It might heal a heart. It might bring strangers together. It might even change a life. And sometimes, all it takes is stopping for a lost puppy.